Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to our open mic this afternoon, Next in Health. The open mic series is proudly curated by Day One, um, Healthcare Innovation, Basel Area's dedicated health tech initiative. My name is Lauren, and I'm delighted to be stepping in as the host tonight from Switzerland Innovation Park, Basel area. Our innovation park is a thriving community of life science and health innovation professionals. And we're spread across 3 campuses, including a 4-floor co-working space here on the Novartis campus, one in the canton of Jura, and then our headquarters in Allschwil, which boasts a co-working space and state-of-the-art laboratories and also private and shared offices. Tonight we're diving into a very important topic, in fact, the environmental impact of clinical trials. With the sector generating CO2 emissions on par with a small country, it seems about time that we rethink how we design and run our trials. So with that, we will be having a wonderful panel of speakers to discuss methods and tools to make trials more sustainable. As always, you're invited to participate in the conversation using Mentimeter. Right here, you can scan the QR code and enter your questions live, and our host or moderator, Daniel, will be taking them as we go. With that, I'd like to hand over to Ursula Costa, my colleague and director of Day One.
Thank you so much, Lauren. A pleasure to be here with you after many open mics, having Rahel. We excused her today. She's on vacation. We wish her the best for those of you that are regulars. So please, I don't want to take any more time because I know you're not here to listen to me. You're here to listen to our wonderful speakers. And I'm very glad that we brought this topic that is more in us or more in our mouths than ever, even if there are big discrepancies across sides of the Atlantic at the moment on the topic of sustainability. And just a tiny opener for you, but just how many tons of CO2 do you think a clinical trial, on average, like a phase 2 clinical trial, let's say, how many tons of CO2 do you think it entails? Does someone want to have a guess? Too shy of an audience. I hope by the end of the panel today I get a lot of good answers, but I can tell you one of the recent papers published on BMG estimates between 70 and 90 tons of CO2 for a phase 2, phase 3 clinical trial, so including a staff traveling, including patient traveling. So it's definitely a topic to address and to look at. We all want better drugs faster to patients. I think we are all united by this mission here, but we also need these better drugs faster to patients on a sustainable way. And I'm really looking forward to what our speakers today are gonna tell us. So please, both online and on-site audience, the questions through Mentimeter, just a reminder. And I'm just delighted to welcome Daniel Guedela. Please, a big round of applause. Who's gonna be moderating this panel today. Thank you. Linus Cow. Thank you, Jürgen Wieland and James Connolly, making it all the way from Washington to be today here with us. So thank you so much to the 4 of you for joining us today.
Excellent. 1, 2, 3, test. Can you hear me good? All good? Excellent. So very good afternoon. Thank you so much for welcoming us. It's a big pleasure to be here today. So with James, Jürgen, and Linus here on stage. So I will kind of go through a couple of topics that I have here. I will write them on the go, so be ready for some improvising. One thing that is really relevant and important, pharmaceutical industry and clinical trials, they are really important. A drug takes 10 to 15 years time from the starting point up until it goes into the market, average times. We're talking about 3 billion investments on average, different studies in there. But there is one thing that we always need, clinical trials, at least so far. Let's see how it evolves. So maybe here some observations, and we are here with, and you guys can do a short intro, a very short one when we go. James, I think I will start with you. I have here something that I would like you to navigate us through. You have lots of experience, and let us just start with the basics. So, what is the environmental impact of healthcare, life science, and clinical trials? And give us an understanding to the audience of the environmental impact of the healthcare now value chain, role of labs, and therefore clinical trials, James.
Great. Well, that's a long question.
Well,
It's very nice to be here. My name's James, and I'm the CEO of My Green Lab. And what our mission is to build a global culture of sustainability and science. So we partner with most of the world's largest pharma companies, as well as academic institutions and labs of all stripes, to help them reduce their environmental impact, primarily through our My Green Lab certification program, which I'll probably get back to a little bit, that Novartis has been a big supporter of for a number of years. So I think you hit on a really important point. The science that companies like Novartis are doing in clinical trials are crucial. They're crucial to the advancement of human health and the advancement of our society generally. But the reality is they also come along with a significant environmental impact. Healthcare is around 4% of total global emissions. It's higher as a percentage in more developed countries. And we did a study that we released at COP in 2021, the Global Climate Conference, that found that biotech and pharma was around 400 million tons of CO2 annually, which is greater than 1,000 natural gas-fired power plants. So the environmental impact of life science is significant. And clinical trials, which is a portion of that overall healthcare impact, is around 100 million tons CO2 equivalent. So it's important that we advance research, but we also have to balance that with the environmental impact of research. And so clinical trials have a lot of different environmental impacts that we're going to get into today. One of the important ones is being the impact of actual laboratory research and testing and diagnostics. Labs themselves are also very energy intensive spaces. They use about 10 times more energy than typical commercial office buildings, use 4 times as much water, and labs produce a huge amount of plastic waste. Actually, there was an academic study that found that academic research was around 2% of global plastic waste. So we are doing important things, but we're also having a big environmental impact, and how we balance those things while still getting the scientific outcomes we hope for is really our goal and why we're working with partners today. So hopefully that answers your question.
That does. It was a long question, a very interesting answer, and very beautiful one. And we are here today at Novartis. So Jürgen, I think I will ask you the next to you. Just get ready. So thank you very much, Novartis, as well, for accommodating here. And you talk about more energy. So, Jürgen, given your leadership role in sustainability at Novartis, can you share how the company is approaching the challenge of making clinical trials more sustainable?
Yes. Also, yeah, thanks a lot for the opportunity here and then for everyone joining. In my role as development sustainability lead, we're looking on the one side on sustainable product process design, so that from an early pipeline stage we can instill sustainability aspects in how we design the production process. A big portion is, however, as you mentioned, the clinical trials, and here we started actually some 5-6 years ago from the global clinical supply line function, who is in charge of providing medication in the several hundred trials we are executing at the same time, to thousands of hospitals who are participating there. And the idea is in the end to ensure that there is no lack of supply, that patients get the medication they need in the trial setting, and that the trial can go on as planned. So what we've seen when looking a few years back is that there was actually a lot of medication waste in the process, as people were planning for a very optimistic recruitment scenario. The product has typically short shelf life, so there's a lot of uncertainties intrinsic to the clinical trial design. And then from the execution, we saw a lot of opportunities to first bring transparency into the demand, into what is available inventory levels, and reduce in the end the total volume of drug and medication for clinical and then also technical demand, actually by more than 2/3 in a few years' time. On top of that, we have seen also a lack of transparency in the medication shipment to those hospitals. There was also a major effort to look into understanding how many shipments do we do in a hospital for supporting certain trials. Also here we were able actually in something like 2 years' time to reduce the medication shipments by more than half. So from a level of 86,000 shipments a year for the trial portfolio, to less than half of that. And starting with those tangible examples where we see also the win-win, where we obviously see also a lot of cost savings linked to that, we were able to make that business case in the company, and then we're looking in the end to other elements. So things like monitoring, travel was a bigger one, and then finally also the clinical sample management, where we actually talk about hundred thousands of shipments where the patient blood, tissue, urine, or whatever is collected in a clinical trial, sent to a central lab, from there sometimes to a reference lab. So there's a lot of logistics involved, a lot of cold chain aggregates, and there's a lot of opportunities which we were pursuing internally in the company, and then ramping up that more strategically, building a team across many line functions so that there's a broad understanding, building those teams, making that part of our core processes so that there is deliverables, and then how we design trials, how we execute trials, and then not keeping also these learnings for us, but contributing then to industry collaboration, where we come together in Sustainable Healthcare Coalition, in other associations or organizations, where we join forces as an industry and then see what we can learn from each other, how we can also support CROs, how can we support also smaller players in the field. And we're opening up also on the Sustainable Healthcare Coalition guidance and tools, how you can measure the trial footprint, how you can identify hotspots, and then building also a knowledge hub, how you can get in contact and really learn how we can improve that.
Fantastic, Jürgen. And I really like, so you were talking about joint efforts, and here Novartis being a big company. So maybe Linus, the next one will go to you. So more of a startup. And Jürgen, you talk about waste reduction, and my mind at least was going to digital kind of space. So Linus, you have led digital transformation initiatives in clinical operations. So what are the key digital tools or strategies that you believe have the most potential to reduce the carbon footprint in clinical trials?
Sounds good. Thank you. I'm Linus, CEO and founder of Skyver Medical. We develop digital solutions, like you said, Daniel, to support clinical trials, especially in operation. And before the startup, I was also working in Novartis on the digital digital front. So I do see a kind of the corporate angle, and also from the startup, how to tackle this. And I think, that's correct. Digital solution does have the potential to reduce the carbon footprint, especially the decentralized clinical trial initiative. That was a big topic 2-3 years ago, mainly driven by the COVID time, when the people are confined at home and this hospital visit became a challenge. So there was a lot of initiative to push that, and we often said pharma is slow to adopt digital technologies. Regulatory framework was too late to the current form, but during that time, actually, a lot has changed. The FDA, EMA, they both released digital health technology kind of guidance and recommendation paper for decentralized elements in clinical trial very early on. Like in 2022, they already draft guidance available, so that's really from the major market, they give the clear guidance how digital solution can support the trials. And how exactly that can reduce the carbon footprint, I think if we look at this 70 to 90 ton carbon dioxide generated from the trial, as Ursula mentioned, about 30 to 60% are due to the travel. So patient travel between home and the hospitals, and also the CRA, they need to go on site and check the source data. So those are the kind of big chunk of carbon emission. And the second part is the logistics, like you mentioned, the drug shipment and so on. That accounts for about 15% to 30%. So these two big pillars are the main part of the carbon footprint in the trial. And the digital solution can help probably mainly on the site visit side. For example, the telemedicine, allowing patients to participate the trial from home. That reduces a lot of travel, and also it's good for the patient because normally for certain indication, the patient may have limited mobility, so they may even need the caregiver's support to go to the site. So in that case, having the option to stay home for certain visit, it's definitely helpful for them. So that's one major area is a decentralized clinical trial. And now I switch my lens from pharma to a startup. And pharma has the muscle to make a trial very complex because they have the resource to do so. But as a startup, we mainly support CROs or biotech companies. And for those companies, they have limited budget and they need to get things done in the time frame. So in that sense, maybe decentralized clinical trial is not the best option for them because that makes the trial operation very complex. You need a separate system to support this remote visit, and you probably need another system to coordinate home nurse visit and direct-to-patient shipment. Those are additional systems, and that means the cost will add up to the budget. But for biotech, they just need to get first-in-human trial done and early phase 2 trial. So in those cases, I think speed is more important than a complex operation. So in that case, what we are supporting them is to give them better feasibility planning, better site selection. So our tool can use the data to provide some suggestions. And with that, they might be able to recruit more patients, targeted recruitment for their patients so that can shorten their patient enrollment time, which is mostly the most difficult part for the trial. And second one is you have a more streamlined digital system to collect the data throughout the trial. So from the first patient in until last patient out, there are a lot of data to be collected from the site. So if you can have an easy-to-use, streamlined solution for that, that make this operation much faster. So I think for the smaller scale trials, speed is the key. Any digital solutions that can reduce the timeline, that will also reduce a lot of carbon footprint.
That's excellent, Linus. So the next one will go for you, James. Though just an observation on what Linus just mentioned there. So from corporate to startup, I think there is so much potential there. And I know a couple of colleagues that have been doing this transition, and it's beautiful. With low resources, one gets more creative and one can go as well the next step. So staying on the digital path, James. So this one, I was just here putting some notes. You are the CEO of My Green Lab. And for you, what are the most significant sustainable challenges in clinical trials today, and how can digital tools help overcome them?
Yeah, so I think ultimately Linus had a really great answer. You know, digital tools are going to transform the way that clinical trials are done. I think one of the parts that's really interesting to me that you didn't answer is how can digital tools and wearables increase adherence and actually make it more effective and provide more real-time feedback. And ultimately, those are going to be really transformative. There's a whole host of ethical issues that go along with them that make it complicated. You know, for us, again, we focus on the impact of laboratories. And I think one of the important things that we found in general working in the life science industry is if you put data in the hands of researchers, they're going to use it. Scientists are data-hungry people. So if they know that there's the environmental impact of a clinical trial and where the hotspots are through using a tool like the low-carbon clinical trial estimator tool that Jürgen referenced from the Sustainable Healthcare Coalition, they're going to say, oh, well, hey, could we do it this different way? And they're going to try to innovate around those hotspots. We do the same thing for laboratories, and these could be R&D labs, or they could be clinical and diagnostic laboratories. We help educate and empower researchers and even the lab techs on what is the environmental impact of what they're doing. And then our tool, which is actually delivered through a remote software tool, a web app, then gives them a whole list of suggestions of things that they could be doing better. So once they know, once there's the awareness that they're having a significant environmental impact, which frankly anybody working a lab already knows, they're throwing away a ton of plastic. Maybe they don't know that there's a huge amount of air or energy going into the building mechanical system, but I think they can generally intuit that, and they know there's a lot of waste. So once we teach them, hey, simple things you can do could reduce the environmental impact. You could close fume hood sashes when they're not in use, which makes about a 30% reduction in fume hood energy consumption. You can chill up freezers. Freezers, ultra-low temperature freezers, are one of the most significant consumers of energy. Chilling them up from -80 to -70 can reduce that energy consumption by 20 to 30%, depending on the unit. without necessarily impacting sample integrity at all. So once you kind of put this data in people's hands and you give them, in our program, an impact estimator tool that allows them to model different scenarios and see what savings they're able to get through implementing best practices, you create this virtuous cycle. So if you daylight things and give people opportunities for improvement, they really start to own it and start to drive innovation. So I think that's really the power of a lot of these digital tools, is that they're putting data in the hands of either clinical trial designers or in the hands of researchers, or in the hands of drug developers, so that they can make thoughtful decisions as they're going through the process and then measure the outcomes. And then the beautiful thing we see is once people start to get measurable success, then they want to go further. They want to go deeper. What's next? And so you're turning what could be sort of a non-virtuous cycle, a negative cycle where you're just doing more and more science to get more and more outcomes. If you understand that environmental impact, you can start to get people to do things more and more efficiently while still getting the same outcomes. And one of the things that I wanted to mention too is a lot of times people sort of think that, oh, well, the science is too important. That's really what we need to focus on. And they're right. The science is the most important aspect of doing this work. It is the most important. But digital tools are an example of where doing better science actually is more efficient often. And implementation of these digital tools isn't only going to have an efficiency benefit, it's going to increase the rigor and integrity of your outcomes. So it's where science and sustainability and technology really line up in a powerful way.
Brilliant. You did mention, James, so efficiency, initiatives, so cost savings. Jürgen, this will go for you next. So how do you ensure, so in your role, that sustainability initiatives, as James was mentioning, in the clinical trials are not just cost savings, but truly impact in reducing the environmental footprint?
Yeah, no, I think it's an important aspect, and I think there is nothing wrong if we get to the win-win, that we get business efficiency, that we get the productivity, and then drive along those sustainability savings. And yeah, some of the examples I mentioned before with the shipment consolidation, or also introducing reusable shipper boxes instead of a single-use box. So we were applying that over the last 5 years already in more than 100,000 shipments. So that is saving a lot of packaging material. And saves through the consolidation of the shipments in the magnitude now over those last couple of years, where we are applying that a couple of tens of millions of dollars. So that's kind of significant magnitudes. And we were probably quite lucky or happy also at development in Novartis, that we had good relation with our former CFO, and were able to introduce what we call a self-funding model. So whenever we have an initiative which is purely driven and initiated by environmental sustainability, so up to half of the financial savings we were able to trigger through that is directly coming into my budget. So that is in the end ensuring that sustainability, first of all, is seen really as a aspect which is increasing value, which is creating this win-win. And people still often come from this, let's say, perception from private experience. If you go for electric heat pump, electric car, it's typically more expensive than the conventional one. If you go for a bio-grown vegetable or fruit, it's the same. So to overcome this barrier, to say the sustainable option needs by definition to be the more cumbersome, costly, difficult, whatever, I think that's the paradigm we need to break. And the more we make it easy, the more we make it attractive, the more we actually also contribute to those cost savings. The easier we can scale up, the faster we can scale up. And then if we see that the climate urgency and the climate crisis accelerating, there is no time to lose. And we do not want to focus only on the, let's say, niche of people who are willing to spend a lot of extra money for being more sustainable. If we want to create impact, we need to make it attractive. And you get it in the end to broad application if it comes with those additional wins, which is next to the planetary and the financial. I mean, it's also about company reputation, about insurance, about there's tender criteria in the hospital procurement, which are looking up to 30% in Nordics and other countries to sustainability, where sustainability of a product is today already in some countries more important than the price of a drug. There is French regulation, which is asking for product carbon footprint to come along with any new marketing authorization. So that's becoming really a thing, and it's not only about the kind of ESG bashing we hear from some administrations these days, but it's really the realization that there is an intrinsic value, and then it's not a political perspective, but it's just logical business sense, operational excellence, however you want to call it. And then so if we can merge that together, I think it's beneficial, and then therefore it allowed us actually also to get some 15, 20 people only for environmental sustainability in development, looking on sustainable product design, supporting on the sustainability on clinical trials. And these savings were allowing us to ramp up our activities much faster than without the savings.
Well, and I really like the sentence, make it attractive. So Linus, next to you, okay? So we had a couple of words already discussed here. So digital, we talk about patient, obviously, which comes to safety somehow, and data. So Linus, how do we balance the need for digital innovation with ensuring patient safety and data security in clinical trials?
That's a very good question, also very technical, I think. So when we select the digital solution, definitely for trials, the data privacy, the patient safety are the most important criteria. And nowadays, I think most of the vendors, they have this ISO 27000 cybersecurity certification. That's one thing like a company will look for, whether CRO or pharma, they look for such a certification to make sure you have at least the kind of standard procedure to safeguard the data and your infrastructure. And in terms of patient safety, that's not entirely on the digital side, because a lot of, in the trial, there's usually a patient safety officer, usually it's a medical doctor, and this person will review the data from time to time from the sponsor side, and the PI, study nurse, they are the actual person, looking after the patient safety. And additional digital solutions usually would not influence this process. This is kind of a regulated process. And what digital solution can do maybe additionally would be, James mentioned, wearables to maybe add a bit of security layer. If something happened to the patient, maybe there's a fall or something like this, then they give an early warning. But patient safety part mostly is not the key element when we look for digital solution to put in the trial. Yeah, and most of solutions are supporting, and we really rely on the professionals to look after the patient safety. And just the data security part, the data privacy, data integrity, those are the elements we really need to ensure in the digital solutions.
Excellent, Linus. James, we'll keep the order. So next one goes to you, and you have lots of experience. Therefore, can you share a practical example of how you have seen digital tools or innovative approaches transform sustainability practice in labs that support clinical trials?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'll give you an example from a large pharma company that we work with. We just launched a new certification tool called My Green Lab Certification 2.0, and it's an online platform that has a survey where everybody in the lab contributes so that you can understand the state of best practice from all of the people in the lab. And what we found is often the lab manager answers a questionnaire very differently than if you survey everybody, including all the lab techs, on what they're actually doing. So just getting that data, the more robust data from everybody in the lab helps. And then I also mentioned we have this impact estimator tool, which allows labs to input the equipment that they have, the current best practices that they're implementing, and the best practices that they want to do, and then measure the environmental savings that they're able to get from it. We rolled that program out to over 100 labs at AstraZeneca in October, and we're seeing greater than a 5x return on investment in 1 year alone, just from measured energy savings. So there's a lot of other savings potentials they're getting from waste reduction in chemicals, but just from energy, which is sort of the easiest thing for us to measure and estimate, they're getting a 5x return on investment right out of the gate. So I think that really speaks to something that Jürgen said. A sustainable or green lab isn't like a more complicated, difficult to do challenge. It's actually just a better, more efficient operation. It's about pursuing operational excellence in your lab and running it as efficiently as possible. And then you're going to have a better lab. So I think that's really crucial. And I think in the sustainability world, we far too often do attribute it to, oh, it's going to cost more, it's not going to have the same benefits. And that's not really the case, actually. If you apply the right tools thoughtfully, tools that help drive multiple beneficial outcomes, efficiency, sustainability, process improvement, often line up and you have win-wins rather than sustainability and finance being in opposition. And I think we really need to think about it that way if we're going to win and we're going to move beyond those early adopters into the mainstream adopters. And ultimately, yes, return on investment is great. Everybody ultimately sort of reports up to the CFO, I would say, in any business. And unless you're able to really articulate in a financial way the benefits of what you're implementing, it's not going to be scaled across the organization. It's only going to be a pilot project. So it's really crucial as we build these tools that we're able to measure and quantify the benefits. And we've seen that happen in real application with our MyGreen Lab certification program. And now we're seeing it scaled across global portfolios of many of the largest pharma companies and hopefully soon all of them so that they're able to see those cost savings and benefits.
That's fantastic, and the examples are really, really good, and that's why we are as well doing this today. So Jürgen, the next go to you, and as well pushing on the examples, and as we are here at Novartis, can you provide an example or two of a successful digital initiative at Novartis that has directly contributed to sustainability in clinical trials?
Yes, I could mention probably a few. Just to the former example, it's not the super fancy AI, but in the end bringing those kind of transparency, which is always digitally enabled when we talk about, again, hundred thousands of shipments or tens of millions of drug product units we are processing in a year for clinical trials. There is no other way than in the end a smart digital solution, which is efficiently collecting the data, which is analyzing the data and making it in a relevant way accessible for the associates to take the daily decisions to realize where is eventually waste in the process, where are optimization, consolidation opportunities. So in a large company with, again, hundreds of trials and in something like 20,000 hospitals with tens of millions of drug product units, there is just no other way to handle all of that. And then I think there's, like we heard, a couple of areas where just business productivity kind of is contributing and driving environment sustainability as well. If we are able to faster identify the clinical site, if we are able to faster identify the patient for the trial, which is well representing also the diversity of the population where we are executing on the trial, that helps in the end to speed up. And in here, yes, we have in Novartis also invested in AI solutions helping here. And I'm actually wondering that we were able to make it to here only without mentioning AI.
We will get there. We will get there. I'm preparing something. We will get there.
So yeah, sometimes it's really not the super fancy AI which is needed, but just the tools which make, again, relevant data available and accessible, which is often making already the difference. And then kind of, when you look in clinical trials, I mean, the probably most fancy you can currently think about is this kind of digital twins where you're really trying to replicate the full execution from the trial design to the setup to the execution in a virtual way in parallel, and then let in the end the AI support you in identifying opportunities, in identifying ways to bring that together. There's still a lot of limitations from the regulatory side. Most likely we will faster be in identifying opportunities when it comes to the placebo control arms, so that based on 10,000 of patient data you have seen in a disease area, that you do not need to recruit another 100, 200 or whatever number of patients with a lot of effort with just a placebo, and in order to provide a control data to the efficacy of your treatment. Those are things where we have first good examples, but there's certainly more room for improvement. But yeah, again, I think in these days, especially in a large company, there's just no way around digital solutions.
Beautiful. And let's stay on the examples. Linus, now to you. Maybe let's jump into a success story. And if you can share with us a success story where digital solutions were able to enhance the sustainability or efficiency of clinical operations.
Yeah, thank you. That's a tough one. I mean, the digital hype was there for many years, but to really name a big success story is still quite challenging, I would say. I can talk about my past experience in Novartis, and also I talked to a lot of pharma company in conferences. They are shared a similar situation. So decentralized clinical trial, it holds a big promise, and company really put in effort to adopt this practice. And but at the end, at least at the time I left Novartis, end of 2023, I think the adoption rate was still considered low. It's probably a single-digit percentage of a trial really having this option to run decentralized clinical trials. But there we already consider as quite a success from 0 to single-digit trials. And I think the main problem is exactly like James mentioned, to do such a big initiative, the return of investment is something really important, and also the acceptance of the trial in the operation team. I think the main issue or challenges for decentralized clinical trial is really the complexity in terms of managing all the vendors, managing all the technologies, and also having the site buy in to use all the technologies. I think that's another hurdle that is a bit out of pharma's control, because a site has already 6, 7 different systems to use. Now you are putting another 3 on top, and they have to be trained. And some patients choose this option to do traditional trials, and the other do kind of decentralized clinical trial. That's just adding a lot of burden really to the site staff. So I think, like James said, you need to have a simplified solution that is scalable and also economically kind of feasible. And I think that's what I learned in Novartis, like this complex trial can probably only be done in a company like Novartis that has the muscle. And when I do my startup, I chose a different route, and I try to make things easier for the trial. That means our solution can do a lot of things just with one platform instead of multiple. And I can share one success story. We recently closed a phase 1 study for a small biotech, and they typically do first in human trial and probably recruit 20, 30 healthy volunteers, and the study usually lasts 3-4 months. And with our solution, because we make things easier, and we do use a bit of AI stuff to automate some manual procedure, not the big fancy idea generating new drug or something, but just for operational efficiency. We use AI to support a bit. So there we are able to shorten the timeline by 2 weeks. So for a 4-month study, 2 weeks is about 25% reduction. So it's small, but we see some hope. Like from there, if you scale to a 4-5 years clinical trial, then the impact can be quite big. So that's just my 2 cents to share.
That's excellent, Linus. And now we are going to the room here for any questions, but we also have here some elements that are coming across. So you can use Mentimeter. And you talk about AI. Just, Jürgen, maybe I start with you and then we can do a round. Please, guys, feel free to jump in. So how do you see the adoption of AI can have an impact, positive or negative, in the CO2 emissions in the clinical trials? So that was the question.
No, definitely. Very fair question. And I mean, the more people get aware about the opportunities to drive productivity, to drive efficiency, I think there's also this increasing awareness of also the strong energy consumption of AI models, the need of not only electricity, but also think a lot of water consumption for the cooling. There is a lot of also data center infrastructure. There is minerals and then all of that which you need for the batteries. So I think it's good to be intentional about that, to see, okay, what are the benefits? And there are definitely a lot of promises and a lot of contributions where technology can help to address some of our environmental challenges. But yeah, if we do 20 different versions of nice cat memes and videos about that, and also, or if we ask AI to answer any simple question, I mean, that's a 10 and 100-fold consumption than if you just do a normal Google search or whatever. So I think the intentional use to see really where these models are providing additional value for the additional energy and then resource consumption, I think that's a important one. And I think we are rolling out a co-pilot largely. We are rolling out some of the AI models, like mentioned, to recruit faster, to gain efficiency. So whenever I think there is a strong contribution to reduce physical resource requirements, then typically the extra energy, as we are also fully supplied in 96% I think of our global energy supply by renewables, so that you can manage. But again, we need to be intentional to not exceed the resource consumption for AI larger than the benefit it brings.
James, anything you wanted to add or Linus?
Yeah, I'll maybe agree with everything that Jürgen said, and maybe add a different way to think about it. So for clinical trials, sort of what I'm saying is if you're using a lab resource, you want to use a more efficient lab resource, one that's operating as efficiently as possible. That will help reduce your footprint. I think it's inevitable in clinical trials and other aspects of life science research that we're going to be using more AI models. In fact, it's probably going to be exponential how quickly we're using these because they offer so much promise for identifying new treatment opportunities and speeding up the nature of research. But we need to think about how we're sourcing that compute now. Are we sourcing it from a data center that's powered by renewable power? Do we even know? Are we doing the computing on site? So it's going to open up a whole new aspect of the environmental impact of research where we need to not only think about the impact of our buildings and the supply chain of the products that we're buying and the impact of our waste, but where we're doing the actual computation and how those data centers are built, how they're sourcing their materials, and where they're getting their energy and water from. And if you look at the big providers of computation, they're actually transitioning very quickly to using much more renewable energy. There's less work done on the sourcing of materials, and there's a lot of issue with conflict materials and the actual how long those data centers last and what they do at the end of their life. But there's a lot of transition happening to the large tech companies and the big cloud service providers actually transitioning to renewable energy, and that needs to be accelerated. So I think the impact of research is going to move from just what's in front of everybody's face to the impact of the computational work that they're doing, and they need to think about that supply chain just like they do the supply chain of the resource and materials that they buy.
Interesting. I have another here for you from the crowd. Do you want to add something, or should I?
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead. So very good. So as you left already Big Pharma, so you're more comfortable to start with this one.
Okay.
How can pharma influence the health authorities or lobby to incentivize or reward, prioritize sustainable product development in the way the clinical trials are conducted? So what are your views there?
For pharma to influence the regulatory, I think Jürgen will be the better person. I think my background is just more on the technical side, and there we do interact with the regulatory authorities, especially when the decentralized clinical trial, digital solutions came up, and normally the health authority, they will start to draft the guideline, and they release the guideline to the world, and they try to collect the feedback from especially big companies. So there, I think it's important to have keep a close interaction with health authority and bring in the view from the pharma side, especially the operational difficulties, the challenges, and how we see this solution can support. And I think in that case, you can try to navigate a bit or influence a bit the regulatory decisions. I remember back in Novartis time, that's also the way we contribute our technical inputs to the guideline, and from there, it got incorporated into the the policy. And the other way is to join those consortiums, like Europe, they have this Horizon initiative, and that usually is a public-private partnership. So there will be big companies, pharma, medtech, and the smaller companies, and also regulatory representatives. So that usually they are in the same consortium, and there is an initiative to support. From there, it's a good way also to align the thinking. And by actually doing the project, they can also see what exactly is happening and why we think this is a good way going forward. So I think these are the two kind of venues I know how pharma can influence. So I think maybe Jürgen can share a bit more.
Yeah, go ahead, Jürgen. Sure, yeah, sure.
I think it's a interesting question, definitely to the point. I think when we look a few years back, we have seen very ambitious EU Green Deal aspiration, and then we have seen in many cases that this was not fully aligned with, let's say, medical regulation from EMA, for example. But we definitely have seen over the last few years and months an increasing awareness of that, and an increasing also wish in the end to identify those conflicting regulations, and then see kind of how we can overcome them. So I mean, we have seen countries like Japan, for example, Singapore, moving ahead already many years ago, where we've just been allowing to remove the patient information, the leaflet in the end from your commercial truck pack, and then switch to a QR code, for example, where you could have much more timely information available, where you do not have a font size of, I don't know, what is that, 2 or 3 or something, and then 20 different languages, which people to 90 whatever X% anyway do not read or do not understand, and move to something which is also more inclusive, which could include a little video, for example, which demonstrates how you can use a device, or gives a bit more practical and then helpful insight. For now, it was not allowed in Europe, so we see more and more pilots to open up into some areas. So when we talk about a blister foil, which often contain PVC so far, just removing this PVC from a blister foil, that's an 8 to 10 years project, because you're in direct touch with the active pharmaceutical ingredient. You do not want to have a stability, you do not want to have side effects. So there's a lot of regulation which makes sustainability sometimes very cumbersome, costly, uses a lot of resources and time, and then creates barriers. So, but I think there's a increasing wish and then willingness to bring that together. I think there was in March the big DIA conference we had also hosted here, and then, not we, which was hosted here in Basel, which also brings regulatory bodies plus industry together. There are these forums of IFPIA, for example, the European Pharmaceutical, let's say, Association, which is in close contact with EU, but also other regulatory bodies. So I think there's a increasing openness to bring that together, but still, a long way to go.
Beautiful. Anything? Can I go ahead, James? I have here something for you. It's okay? So we talk about measurement data. Question: why is measurement and verification important when adopting digital tools and innovative approaches?
Yeah, that's a great question. Maybe I'll answer it first from just the context of sustainability. I think a lot of the ESG backlash that we're seeing that actually happened before Trump was elected, and certainly now has been continued by his administration, was there's a lot of fuzzy sustainability information out there. ESG itself is a bit of a fuzzy topic. And when we boil it down to what are companies actually doing that's driving beneficial business outcomes that they're measuring and are getting verified, I think we cut through all that greenwashing and we speak to things that are a much more important business priority. So I think people from a sustainability standpoint globally want to move beyond sort of posturing around sustainability and get to what's actually going to drive and make a long-term difference for the environment and for the bottom line. Ultimately, I think third-party verification and measurement is crucial in order to do that. You can't just have a green program. You need to have a program where you're demonstrating measurable outcomes, and ideally, you're getting those outcomes third-party verified if you're going to be able to make a credible claim. And while there's perhaps some what I think is likely short-term political turbulence happening in the US, if you look at where the EU regulatory environment is moving, it's continuing to be more and more aggressive around sustainability claims and how companies back them up. And I think that's a good thing. That's a great thing for the industry so that you can trust and know that it's meaningful. We've all had the experience of seeing like a vague, misleading, confusing sustainability claim like, oh, this green product. And you're like, what does that mean, actually? We don't trust that. We need third-party standards. And that's actually going to be the new regulatory environment in the EU starting in March 2026. So the European Union passed a law called the Empowering Consumers Directive that was squarely targeted in getting rid of misleading and confusing environmental claims. It's actually already gone into force in terms of regulating companies' claims around things like carbon neutrality. You've probably been reading about that. There's some legislation or there's some case law that's moving forward. Starting in March 2026, any environmental claim a company makes is going to need to be backed up by verification, third-party verification. And any sustainability standard that a company claims is going to need to be an independent, third-party verified sustainability standard. We were aware of this transition, and that's why My Green Lab is positioning all of our certifications to be third-party verified sustainability standards that align with international best practice. But I think it's going to be really powerful for consumers. And if you're a company that's making a sustainability claim right now and you aren't measuring it and it's not third-party verified, watch out. Because we've learned that actually not only is this new regulation going to apply to business to consumer claims, it will also potentially apply in certain jurisdictions to business claims. So I think it's more important than ever to cut through the greenwashing and make sure that if you're making a claim that it's clear, it's verifiable, and that you're actually getting third-party verification. And I think that will really clean things up and allow us to know when somebody is making a claim that it's credible so that we can focus our dollars and our purchasing on those companies that are really driving true, meaningful impact reductions.
Excellent. Thanks, James. That was very, very meaningful. Thank you. And we have here a question from the audience. It is very practical. It sounds to me like a brainstorming. So I will push it forward, and then you guys tell me. So there are a huge number of trial lab kits that are sent to the sites and cannot be used because one of the tubes is expired. And then new kits need to be shipped. Do you have any ideas to streamline the process? Who wants to start? I'm looking my left hand.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, the central lab kits, as let's say the physical kits itself, but and the shipments itself. I mean, again, it's definitely a big contribution. And yes, I think the problem which was described is certainly a real one. We got from some hospitals also sometimes pictures where they build on let's say Christmas trees, for example, with unused patient kits, which were summing up for the end of the year. So yeah, it's definitely a massive problem. I mean, in my wildest dreams, I'm looking forward to a situation where we actually do not need to provide for a hospital in the end a study or even patient-specific kit with all these kind of tubes and in the end commodities, but that we could rather arrange for a bit of standards and saying, okay, what you need for a 20 milliliter or a 50 milliliter blood draw, what you need for a certain type of samples you would take in clinical trials, avoid all the specific effort to do that with the good intent to make it easy for the site hospital and ensure also here compliance. But yeah, from my perspective, there could be a much more pragmatic way by arranging and kind of looking back to the ACT labels of My Green Lab, what are sustainable lab kits, define that, and then whatever, if it's a Roche, a Sanofi, a GSK or a Novartis trial, just use this 20 milliliter pipette and this 50 milliliter whatever, label it obviously specific to the trial need. And then, I mean, there's even right now central labs who are allowing to even put the collected lab kits from different trial sponsors across different trials just in one pack and then ship it together into the same central lab, which was contracted. So I think such a, probably from today's perspective, still a couple of years into the future, but those kind of a bit of innovative approaches could help tremendously to reduce that. We have seen trials with 70-80% of the lab kits we are providing being wasted. We have partnered with, like many others of our peers, with Kids for Life, for example, that these excess kits could be at least used for veterinary for training purpose, or the remaining portions then of a kit which has then still to be removed from clinical use to provide then the good portion of it to developing countries that deserves needs there. So there is still a lot to be done, but I think the standardization could help to bring that together.
Brilliant. Guys, anything else? Otherwise we go to the next.
Yeah, I was just going to maybe add on what Jürgen said. We quickly learned you can't have a green lab without purchasing green lab products, and what was really surprising is there is no third-party sustainability standard for lab supplies. And so one of the important things for clinical trials, I mentioned, having labs operate efficiently, but the materials that we're purchasing to conduct the trial also be made in a sustainable way. But before the ACT label, there wasn't actually a consistent way to evaluate products so that you could know and choose, or even Novartis could know and choose when it's putting together its kit, whether or not it was choosing the most sustainable lab products. So we've created the ACT Eco label, and we have over 60 companies and over 1,500 products that have gone through it. And so if you're involved in purchasing products or specifying products, it's a great tool for you to drive consistency. And what ACT stands for is accountability, consistency, and transparency in the supply chain of lab supplies. So just wanted to build a little bit on what Jürgen said there.
Fantastic. It's okay. Can we go next? Yes. Yeah, it's all right. So there is one question, I think, Jürgen, it's directionally to you, but I will put it a bit broader. So I will read it as we have here from the audience. What incentives does Novartis provide to clinical teams to consider sustainability when designing or planning the trials? But maybe more holistically, big pharma companies, what are your views? What kind of incentives? You talk a bit already about that, but maybe to reiterate.
I mean, first of all, the biggest incentive to work on sustainability, I think, is just our intrinsic need in the end to ensure that planetary and human health are thought together. There is just no healthy human being on a dead planet. It's as simple as that. And I mean, when we see kind of the healthcare contribution to, or as a contributor to the climate crisis, which is in the range of a 5%, statistics talk something about 2.5 billion tons of CO2 a year. So healthcare system overall is a major contributor also of the problem. So while we're doing good in the end for patients and then people's quality and then length of life, we are actually causing also a lot of damage with not only the CO2 but pharmaceutical and the environment. I mean, there is a lot of environmental issues which we are definitely aware, and then I think where we have not only the conceptual accountability, but the real responsibility to act. So that's foremost. So we do not have a financial incentive saying, okay, you get the extra bonus if your trial is more sustainable or something like that. I mean, there is a long-term remuneration also for top management, which is sticking to our commitments also on the ESG and environmental side. But again, this, let's say, financial incentive is probably not the most rewarding. What we do next to My Green Lab on employee engagement is also running workshops like Climate Fresh, so that people really understand kind of what the climate science tells us, what's the urgency to act. We have literally a very few years left in order to significantly cut down the emissions. And there are so many engaged associates in the company who are willing to make more than what's written in the job description, who see the purpose, who see every other day the extreme weather events, who see also the human implications of the accelerating climate crisis, that this is actually, let's say, enough of an incentive for people really willing to go the extra mile to see the positive impact. And then when you look on a personal life, I mean, Europe, Switzerland, we talk typically something like 10, 15 tons per person per year, what we are individually accountable for. So if you have a couple of intercontinental flights, you have a big SUV, and you eat a lot of meat, you're certainly above that. But even if you remove all of those not so sustainable options, you're still in a 5 to 10 tons somewhere range. So it's limited what you can do in your, let's say, private setting, even so that's still important. When associates see, hey, an activity which is sitting on my desk here, where I have a decision to take, do I go whatever for a central lab versus a local lab, just as simple as that in my clinical trial, that can have the multiple in the end of the yearly whole family's implication. And I think that making that transparent, seeing kind of how people can contribute also to the big picture, I think, yeah, that's rewarding, and that is where we're also very thankful for the big engagement in the organization who is driving, supporting that without a top-down task. So everything we actually did on the clinical trial of sustainability was 100% bottom-up based on employees' engagement. There was never, ever a top-down mandate that we have to do certain things. It came from the organization that people really want to make a difference, and there's a few other colleagues also from the early days here who helped to shape that.
Beautiful. James, anything to add over here?
Yeah, I think I love what you're saying there. I think intrinsically, if you give people the data, particularly in our industry, in the science industry more broadly, they want to do the right thing. And you just need to give them the tools to do the right thing, and the measurement tools to show that they've done the right thing. And then actually that creates this powerful virtuous cycle where a grassroots effort can eventually become a movement across an entire company. And we've seen My Green Lab projects that started out with an interested scientist that brought it to the organization. They certified their lab, their whole building got certified, and then it actually changed and became part of corporate strategy, and ultimately ignited sort of a global movement around these issues. So all of us, no matter where we sit, have the opportunity to change things. But I do think it's really important that grassroots efforts eventually get top-down support from an organization, so that there's enough resources to really make it as effective as possible. And then ultimately, we do need policy drivers. So it's great, and right now, probably for the next 4 years in the US, a little less than that now, we're probably not going to have significant policy drivers, but there are significant policy drivers in Europe, and I think there will be significant policy drivers again from the US federal government if we have a change of administration in the future. But pharma, I think, has really positioned and needs to take responsibility for its ability to be a leader. Jürgen and I were talking over lunch today. This is the industry that has the culture of innovation. It has the resources. It knows the climate science. There's no debate about the climate science in pharma. And it has this mission responsibility where pharma is about improving health. So if we're about improving health, tackling the climate crisis head on is crucial. And we're used to making long-term investments for the benefit of society. And I think one of the most important benefits that pharma can make to the benefit of society right now is to be the first industry to demonstrate that you can actually get to zero carbon, and you can do it in a way while you're still producing amazing medicines that are transforming the world, improving lives, and thereby inspire the rest of the world's industries to follow suit.
Excellent. Linus, anything you want to add?
Sure, just a quick one. I think I fully agree with what you said. Sometimes this ESG part is really intrinsic to most of people working on the work. But sometimes we just too busy. I mean, when I was in the trial team, I was just busy with the daily work. We didn't realize actually 1 day of delay could produce more compound for this trial, because there's a clear study showing that 1 day of delay in a clinical trial can lead to directly $40,000 trial costs. But I think this is also certain part linked to the carbon emission, because a trial is like, you can imagine that's like an engine of a car. Once you start the trial, you turn on the engine, even if there's no patient recruiting, you still have all the energy consumption for electronic systems, for the site infrastructure, for the kids, and maybe some of the kids will expire because it got delayed, and a batch of the kits need to be scrapped. So that's also all contributed to that carbon footprint. But if we can do things more efficiently and people realize, okay, if we make the trial shorter, and the team will be happy, because nobody would like to delay or extend your timeline, right? And at the same time, you bring the drug to the next level, whether the decision is good or not. At least you have a decision, and the drug has a patent, right? So if the earlier you know the result, the better for it. So that's also align your incentive on the sustainability, also to the company profitability. So I think that's a very good alignment between the top and down, and mainly just do things basically more efficient and get things done a bit quicker. Then we can stop the engine of the trial, and then we hopefully make the world also a bit better. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So we are going towards the end of today's presentation, discussion, conversation. I will ask you afterward now, guys, just a final round of any final thoughts and reflections as we are today, and then maybe I start with you, James, and we go this way. As we are today in one of the most relevant hubs in the world of the pharmaceutical industry, and it's really important to have those conversations, those discussions, and thank you very much for the ones that send all the questions. We don't have time to go through all of them, but we'll be around to answer them. So starting with you, James, any final reflections and thoughts?
Yeah, painfully aware I'm maybe one of the few Americans in this room right now. We are talking about changes in U.S. federal policy, but with the lack of that regulatory and policy push, it makes what private companies and public companies voluntarily do, or institutions, much more important. And so we have an opportunity right now where, as an industry, we need to step up. And we don't have the regulatory push yet. But actually, the way that market transformation happens often is that industry demonstrates it's possible, and then regulation comes along to support it. So now, more than ever, the industry needs to step up and show that it's serious about meeting its zero carbon commitments and goals through all aspects of research, whether it's labs or clinical trials. And I think we can continue to demonstrate that it's possible. And then regulation will follow, but we can't take our foot off the gas pedal right now, particularly right now in this moment.
Thank you, James. Jürgen?
Yeah, I mean, the first comment I want to make, I mean, Novartis was mentioned now a couple of times. This is not only about Novartis. I really want to emphasize that this is really something what the colleagues from Roche, but also from Sanofi and AstraZeneca and GSK and Merck and then also J&J and some of the American players are heavily engaged. So it's really something where the industry is stepping up. It's really something where industry is collaborating in a pre-competitive way in not only the Sustainable Markets Initiative on CEO level, where they're regular coming together with also NHS England, WHO, and then others, but where you have in the Pharmaceutical Environmental Group, Pharmaceutical Supply Chain Initiative, and in several EU programs like Innovative Health Initiative programs, but also on the clinical trial side in the Sustainable Healthcare Coalition, a lot of industry consortia, and then that's definitely a big invite to everyone in whatever type of organization you sit, whatever type of role you have. Don't wait the neighbor, the others, the boss to tell you what to do, but find yourself in the end. What is the contribution? What is the solution you can bring and contribute to the table? The urgency is there. The crisis is there. I mean, looking into my kids' eyes, when I just overlapped that with kind of what is the climate protection, when they are in my age or a bit older, that's not the earth I want to hand over. So I think we all have to step up. So a call for action that's, exchange and sharing best practice is the important part. The more important one is to get things done and really take action.
Beautiful CTA call to action. Linus?
Yeah, so fully agree. I just imagine when I was young, I'm from Taiwan, and I think when I was young, in the summertime, it's still quite pleasant outdoor. You can have a barbecue, you can sit there with the breeze, it's very pleasant. But now if you go back, if you visit Taiwan in the summertime, the heat is unbearable. Like outdoor, it's just very, very hot. And most people stay in the room with air conditioning, that makes things worse, right? So just thinking about that and how quickly this climate change happened just in the past 10 years, I think we really need to do something. And life science is doing a lot of good things, good research to cure the people. But I think just like you said, if we can also take into the sustainability into account and make things more efficient, make a trial shorter, faster, more efficient, less waste, then we are also doing something good for the earth. I think that's what everybody likes, right? So that's it. Yeah.
Wonderful. So before giving it to the folks in here, day one, Basel area, thank you so much for creating this space of curiosity, and a big round of applause to the guys here. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you guys so much for the really rich discussions that we had today. Come to this side. Thank you so much, James and Daniel, Jürgen, and Linus. It was a really wonderful discussion, and I think it leaves us with a lot of hope that sustainability doesn't have to be a financial burden, and I think we all have a lot to think about with the call to actions that you left us with. We are also here to thank you, audience, for being here, participating with your questions, and those of you online, thank you for being here. We also want to mention that we will have an apéro, and you're all invited to join to continue the conversation. If any of you are interested in working at Novartis, you can come talk to me. Novartis, the co-working space, not Novartis, the company. Although you have someone to talk to there. It would also be amiss for me not to mention that our Switzerland Innovation Park Basel area is opening in June, the most sustainable office building in Switzerland. So it's called the Hortus, if you remember that. Hortus, one thing. You're all also welcome to come by and check out the building on June 18th. We have an open day for the public. So I'll hand it over to Ursula.
I'm the only thing standing between you and the apéro, so I promise I'm going to be very, very short. But I really want to thank, first of all, Novartis for supporting us and making this event possible on a quarterly basis for 5 years now. So big thank you to Novartis, but also big thank you to our panelists today for bringing your perspective, for bringing the topics. I'm aware there were tons of questions, both from on-site and online people. We could have done a whole panel just to answer those, but for those of you in the room, please, now I'm putting you on the spot, but the conversation can continue with a glass of wine or water in your hands. So big applause to everyone, and thank you. Looking forward to seeing you on September 15th for the next open mic. You can save the date in your calendars. Bye.